In this unit, we're going to talk about statistics, and we're going to focus mainly on statistical studies, talking about what that entails, and using a couple of different examples. There's an example within the PowerPoint, and then there's also, I'm going to look at an example from the Pew Research Corporation in terms of kind of answering some of these questions. So first of all, we want to define statistics in general. So statistics is can be both a noun and a verb. And so in terms of the verb, it's the science of, so statistics is a science of collecting and analyzing data. And then in terms of the noun, statistics is also the data that is produced or the data that is found from this collecting and analyzing. And to some extent, we can also say it's the inferences that we make after we've analyzed the data. So when we talk about the science of collecting and analyzing the data, we always make inferences. In other words, we make those conclusions based on our collection and analyzing of the data. And so there's some basic steps to every statistical study. And so you always want to state the goal, who the population is, and what you want to learn. And sometimes we can think about the goal and what you want to learn as the same thing. So those two things can be one and the same thing, or they could be different. So if we look at the article that is linked in the webpage or in Canvas, and I have this one linked, and so the title kind of gives us maybe what the goal of this particular statistical study is asking for. So what Latinos say Democrats care about. Most Latinos say Democrats care about them and work hard for their vote. Far fewer say so of the GOP. So it sounds like we can conclude that the goal or what this study wants to find out is some information about Latinos in terms of how the Democrats and the GOP are working for them. And now we want to look at the population. And sometimes your population is best found when you look at the sample. And so there is a difference between a population and a sample. And so the population is always non-numeric data. Whereas sample is numeric data or numeric information, I guess might be a better way to say it versus data. So if we look back at this, and we can read a lot about this, but just in the how we did this gives us a lot of information. So it talks about the Pew Research Center, which is a very reputable company. We surveyed 7,647 U.S. adults. 3,000 of them were Hispanic. Gives you the time frame in which it stated, gives you some more information about how they picked these people. So the sample itself is 7,647 U.S. adults. So that must mean that the population is U.S. adults. So in this particular case, we're talking about the population is all U.S. adults. That's who our population is. Again, it's non-numeric, so we don't have a numerical piece of information, whereas in this case, the sample is 7,647 U.S. adults. So that's the difference between a sample and a population. Your sample is always a subset of your population. So first you set your goal, figure out who your population is. Then you're going to choose a sample. The text actually talks about 4 different types of sampling methods. There's many, many more than this, but there are these 4 to consider. So there's simple random. So you choose a sample of items that has an equal chance of being picked. Systematic, and so you choose your sample based on a set criterion. If you can think about maybe lining up by height, and then you do from the shortest person and the greatest person are teamed up together, and then the next group of people, and so on and so forth. That can be a system of how you pick your sample. There's convenient sampling. Say I want to find out something about people's grocery shopping preferences, or what they do when they're in a grocery store. That can be done. So maybe because I shop at Fry's, I'm going to look at Fry's and Sprouts because those are convenient for me. And then stratified sampling, and that's where we take a sample and then break it into subgroups. So in this case, this is a good example of that, where we have 7,600 of adults, including 3,000 of them were Hispanic. So it's been broken into Hispanics and non-Hispanics. And then if you also look at this, they give a long, any good reputable survey will also give you lots of definitions about what they mean by Hispanic, what they mean by second generation, third generation, and so on and so forth. What it means about Democrat in terms of defining Democrats, Republicans, GOP, and the like. All right. So once you have picked out your sample, and you can use any of these 4 methods or multiple other methods, your book just talks about those particular 4 methods, we go on to the actual collection of the data. So we need to collect raw data. We only ask, so we ask the sample. Remember, the sample is a subset of your population. So you ask the sample, so you're gathering data from the sample. This is why it's called a sample statistic. So if we look back at this particular survey, this information where it says 26% of Latinos say the Democratic Party not too well or not well at all is 26% for the Democratic Party. That's 26% of the sample that was asked. So 26% of our 7,647 people that were in the sample. Okay, so all this information is based on the sample. And so we collect all the data based on the sample. And then from that, we can make these inferences. Again, inferences is what the goal is anytime we're doing a study, is we want to find out, we know what the sample says. We don't care about the sample. We want to know what our population is thinking. That's why we take a representative sample from them. Okay, so we'll talk about the rest of this in terms of making those leap of faith in our next section.